The moment Evelyn Sterling's $3,000 heels hit that wet marble floor, everything changed. Chicago's most ruthless billionaire went down hard in front of 50 witnesses, and the first person she destroyed afterward was the janitor holding the mop. Nathan Hayes, broke, desperate, one medical bill away from losing his dying daughter, got fired on the spot for her humiliation. He should have walked away, should have stayed silent. Instead, he turned back and said 9 words that would tear apart everything Evelyn thought she knew about her own father. There are things about him you never knew. Want to see what happens when a billionaire's perfectly controlled world gets shattered by the man she just destroyed? Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. You won't believe where this goes. The ice came early that year. By mid-November, Chicago looked like something out of a disaster movie. Gray slush piled against every curb, frozen rain turning the sidewalks into death traps, wind cutting through the downtown canyon so sharp it felt personal. The kind of cold that didn't just chill you, it invaded. Got inside your bones and reminded you that winter in this city didn't care about your schedule, your money, or your problems. Nathan Hayes stood outside the emergency room of Northwestern Memorial at 4:47 in the morning, watching his 8-year-old daughter sleep in the back seat of his 15-year-old Honda. Emma's breathing was finally steady again after 3 hours of nebulizer treatments. The nurses had wanted to keep her overnight, but overnight meant a $2,800 admission fee his insurance wouldn't touch, and Nathan was already 4 months behind on the premiums anyway. So he'd signed the discharge papers against medical advice, carried his daughter through the sliding doors into air so cold it made his teeth hurt, and now he sat in a car that wouldn't start, watching her chest rise and fall in the dim glow of the hospital entrance. The engine turned over. Died. Turned over again. Nothing. Nathan pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and did the math he'd been avoiding all night. $73 in checking. Maybe another $40 in the glove compartment if he counted everything, including the quarters. Emma's next prescription refill was $62. The rent was already 12 days late. And his shift at Sterling Crest Holdings started in exactly 2 hours and 13 minutes. He couldn't afford to miss it. Couldn't afford the gas to get there either, but that was a different problem. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was small and rough from all the coughing. Nathan twisted around, forcing his face into something that wasn't terror. "Hey, baby, how you feeling? Are we going home?" "Car's just being stubborn. Give it a minute." She didn't argue, just pulled her threadbare pink blanket tighter and closed her eyes again. 8 years old and already so tired of being sick, of being scared, of watching her father pretend everything was fine when they both knew it wasn't. Nathan tried the ignition one more time. The engine caught. He didn't wait to see if it would die again. Just put it in gear and pulled out of the parking lot before the universe could change its mind, heading south toward the studio apartment in Pilsen where the heat barely worked and the bathroom ceiling was growing something that definitely wasn't supposed to be there. 2 hours later, he was pushing a janitor's cart through the marble lobby of Sterling Crest Holdings, trying to stay invisible. The building was ridiculous. 73 floors of steel and glass stabbing up into the Chicago skyline like some architect's middle finger to gravity. The lobby alone was bigger than most people's houses, all polished Carrara marble and floor-to-ceiling windows, with abstract sculptures that probably cost more than Nathan would make in his entire life, scattered around like expensive paperweights. He'd been working here for 6 months and still wasn't used to it. Sterling Crest Holdings owned half the commercial real estate in 3 states, had their fingers in everything from construction to tech development, and employed about 4,000 people who all seemed to exist in a completely different world than Nathan did. They walked past him every day in their tailored suits and designer shoes, talking on phones that cost more than his rent, complaining about restaurant reservations and vacation homes while Nathan emptied their trash cans and tried not to think about how far he'd fallen. 3 years ago, he'd been one of them. Not the suits, he'd never been corporate, but he'd been somebody. Senior systems engineer at a major infrastructure firm, designing traffic management systems for cities, making enough money that he didn't have to choose between Emma's medicine and keeping the lights on. He and Jennifer had just bought a house in Oak Park, had plans, a future that made sense. Then Jennifer got sick. Stage 4. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. The medical bills alone had destroyed them, but it was what came after that really finished the job. Nathan couldn't work and take care of Emma and watch his wife die all at the same time. Something had to give. So he'd taken a leave of absence that turned into a resignation, burned through their savings in about 8 weeks, lost the house 4 months later, and by the time he finally came up for air, he was radioactive in his industry. Nobody hires a systems engineer who's been out of the field for 2 years. Nobody trusts code written by someone who might disappear for weeks at a time because his kid can't breathe. So now he pushed a mop and tried not to think about the fact that he had a master's degree in computer engineering and spent his nights scrubbing toilets in a building designed by people who'd never worried about money a day in their lives. Hayes. Nathan looked up. Marcus Chen, the facility's supervisor, was walking toward him with that expression he got when corporate was breathing down his neck about something. Yeah? We need extra coverage on Executive 72 today. Big memorial service for the old man. Lots of foot traffic, lots of catering, lots of very important people who don't want to see cleaning staff. Think you can handle it? The old man was Charles Sterling. Founder of Sterling Crest Holdings, Chicago legend, died 3 weeks ago at 79 after building an empire that most people assumed would last forever. Nathan had never met him, but you couldn't work in this building without hearing the stories. Brilliant, ruthless, self-made billionaire who'd started with nothing and built everything. The kind of success story people wrote books about. Sure, Nathan said. When? Service starts at 11. Be invisible until it's over, then clean up fast. Ms. Sterling doesn't like delays. Ms. Sterling? Evelyn Sterling. 30 years old, CEO for the last 3 years, and according to every person Nathan had ever overheard in this building, the coldest human being currently walking the earth. Beautiful. Like a knife was beautiful. Smart like a shark was smart. And absolutely terrifying in ways that had nothing to do with her money. Nathan had seen her exactly twice in 6 months. Both times from a distance. Both times she'd looked like she was carved from ice. Perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect clothes, moving through the world like someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. Got it, Nathan said. Invisible, fast cleanup. Marcus nodded and walked away, already pulling out his phone to deal with the next crisis. Nathan went back to mopping. Gods. By 10:30, the executive floor was chaos. Caterers rushed past with trays of food that probably cost more per bite than Nathan's hourly wage. Audio-visual techs adjusted microphones and tested lighting. Security guards spoke quietly into radios, checking credentials, making sure nobody who shouldn't be there got anywhere near the memorial service. Nathan stayed in the corners, wiping down already clean surfaces, emptying trash cans that were barely full, doing the work that kept him employed while trying not to watch the display of wealth happening around him. The guest list was insane. State senators, CEOs, people whose faces Nathan recognized from news broadcasts and magazine covers. All of them dressed in funeral black that somehow still managed to look expensive, gathering in the massive conference room that had been converted into something between a chapel and a corporate presentation. And then she arrived. Evelyn Sterling stepped out of the private elevator at exactly 10:47, and every conversation in the hallway died mid-sentence. She was wearing black, obviously, but not the soft, mourning kind. This was architectural black, a dress that looked like it had been engineered rather than sewn, all clean lines and severe elegance. Her dark hair was pulled back so tight it made Nathan's scalp hurt just looking at it. Diamond earrings that probably cost more than his car caught the light every time she moved her head. But it was her face that got you. Beautiful in that way that didn't feel real. Pale skin, sharp cheekbones, eyes so dark they looked black from a distance. Completely composed, absolutely controlled, like she was attending a board meeting instead of her father's memorial service. She walked past Nathan without seeing him, literally looked right through him like he was furniture, and disappeared into the conference room. The doors closed. The hallway slowly came back to life. Nathan pushed his cart toward the small service corridor that ran behind the executive floor, figuring he'd stay out of sight until the service was over and people started leaving. He'd just reached the corridor entrance when he heard the shouting. Not loud, not out of control, but definitely not the kind of sound you expected from a corporate memorial service. The conference room doors opened. Someone came out fast. A man in his 50s, red-faced, furious, followed by two security guards who were clearly trying to escort him out without making a scene. "She's going to destroy everything he built," the man was shouting, not quite yelling, but close enough. "Charles would be ashamed of what she's done to this company. Ashamed!" The security guards kept moving him toward the elevators, professional and calm, and the man kept shouting until the elevator doors closed and cut him off mid-sentence. Silence dropped back over the hallway like snow. Nathan didn't move, didn't want to draw attention to himself by walking away, just stayed frozen next to his cart, trying to disappear. That's when Evelyn Sterling came out of the conference room. She was walking fast. Too fast. Her face was still composed, still controlled, but something in her eyes looked wild. Trapped, like she was holding something back through sheer force of will, and it was taking everything she had. She made it maybe 10 steps before her heel caught the edge of the mat. Nathan saw it happen in slow motion. The Persian runner someone had put down to protect the marble was slightly off-center, creating a small raised edge. Evelyn's heel caught it at the worst possible angle, and suddenly she was falling, not gracefully, not slowly, but hard and fast and completely unable to stop it. She hit the marble floor with a sound that made everyone in the hallway gasp. For exactly 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then chaos. Security rushed forward, executives crowded around asking if she was okay, if she needed help, if someone should call medical. Evelyn pushed them back with a fury that made grown men step away from her like she was radioactive. "Don't touch me!" Her voice was sharp enough to cut. "I'm fine. Everyone back up. Now!" They backed up. She got to her feet, unsteady, humiliated, shaking with something that looked like rage but might have been something worse. And that's when her eyes found Nathan. He was standing 15 feet away, still holding the handle of his cleaning cart, still trying to be invisible. It didn't work. "You." Evelyn's voice was cold and precise. "Your facilities, correct?" Nathan nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." "This floor is wet." She gestured at the marble with a hand that was trembling slightly. "I just fell in front of 50 people because your floor is wet. Do you understand how unacceptable that is?" The floor wasn't wet. Nathan had mopped this section 3 hours ago, and it had been bone dry since then. But pointing that out seemed like a really bad idea when Evelyn Sterling was staring at him like she wanted to set him on fire. What's your name?" "Nathan Hayes." "Well, Nathan Hayes, you're fired." She said it like she was ordering coffee. Flat. Final. Not even angry anymore, just done. "Security will escort you out. Remove your badge, collect your things, and leave the building immediately." The hallway was completely silent. Nathan felt his entire body go numb. The part of his brain that still functioned was doing math again. $73 in checking, Emma's prescription due in 5 days, rent already late. No job means no insurance, means no way to pay for the next emergency room visit that would definitely happen because they always happened in winter. He should have walked away. Should have just nodded and left and figured out how to survive this later. Instead, he heard himself say, "Ms. Sterling." She turned back, eyebrows raised like she couldn't believe he was still speaking. "There are things about your father you never knew." The words came out quiet, calm. Not a threat, not a plea. Just a statement of fact. Evelyn stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. "Excuse me?" "Your father," Nathan said. "There are things about him you never knew, things he never told you." The silence got heavier. "Security," Evelyn said, not taking her eyes off Nathan. "Get him out of here, now!" 2 guards moved forward. Nathan didn't resist. Just let them take his badge, escort him to the service elevator, ride down 72 floors in complete silence. They walked him through the lobby, different from the executive entrance, meant for people like him who weren't supposed to be seen, and out onto the street into air so cold it felt like breathing glass. The door closed behind him. Nathan stood on the sidewalk in his facilities uniform, no coat, no plan, and absolutely no idea how he was going to explain to Emma why Daddy didn't have a job anymore. His phone buzzed, text from the after-school program. "Emma's having trouble breathing. Can you pick her up early?" Nathan closed his eyes, started walking toward the bus stop. Behind him, 72 floors up in a building made of steel and glass and money, Evelyn Sterling stood in her office and tried to remember how to breathe. The memorial service was perfect. That's what everyone said afterward. Perfect speeches, perfect music, perfect tribute to a man who'd built an empire from nothing and changed the Chicago skyline forever. Evelyn had given the closing remarks herself, 5 minutes of carefully written prose about legacy and vision and the future of Sterling Crest Holdings, and everyone had nodded along like she'd said something profound. She didn't remember a single word of it. All she could think about was hitting that floor. The sound, the pain shooting through her knee, the absolute humiliation of going down hard in front of people who already thought she was too young, too cold, too female to run her father's company. And then firing that janitor because she needed to hurt something, and he was the closest target. There are things about your father you never knew. What the hell did that mean? Evelyn stood at the windows of her office, looking down at Chicago's 72 floors below, and tried to make the words make sense. The janitor, Nathan Hayes, according to his personnel file, had no connection to her father, no history with Sterling Crest beyond his 6 months as facilities staff. No reason to say something like that except to get under her skin. So why couldn't she stop thinking about it? Her phone buzzed. Michael Richardson, the family attorney, requesting a meeting tomorrow morning to finalize her father's will. Evelyn texted back confirmation and set the phone down. The will was a formality. She already knew what was in it, everything to her, minus some charitable donations and small bequests to longtime staff. Her father had been many things, but sentimental wasn't one of them. He'd built Sterling Crest Holdings to last forever, and he'd raised Evelyn to protect it after he was gone. She looked at her reflection in the dark window. 30 years old, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Exactly what her father had trained her to be since she was old enough to sit in board meetings and understand what power looked like, and somehow still the loneliest person in the building. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Michael. Actually, can we move the will reading to tonight? Some unexpected complications. 8 p.m. at the office. Evelyn frowned. Complications? She texted back, what kind of complications? The response took 3 minutes. Better discussed in person. See you at 8. Nathan made it home at 2:15 p.m. with Emma sleeping against his shoulder and $43 less in his bank account after paying for the cab because the bus would have taken 2 hours and Emma couldn't breathe well enough to wait that long. Their apartment was freezing. He'd called the landlord 6 times about the heat. 6 times he'd gotten the same answer. Building-wide issue, working on it, be patient, which was code for, we don't care because you're poor and behind on rent, and we both know you can't afford to move. Nathan laid Emma on the couch, covered her with every blanket they owned, and turned on the space heater they'd bought at Goodwill for $12. It rattled and hummed and probably wasn't safe, but it was the only thing keeping the apartment above 50 degrees. Emma opened her eyes. Did you get fired? Nathan's stomach dropped. What? I heard you on the phone. In the cab. Her voice was still rough, but her eyes were clear, too aware. You got fired. There was no point lying to her. Emma was 8 years old and had already learned more about poverty and survival than most adults would know in a lifetime. Yeah, Nathan said quietly. I got fired. Why? Because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and someone needed someone to blame. Emma processed that for a moment. What are we going to do? I don't know yet, baby, but we'll figure it out. Will I have to change schools again? The question hit him like a punch. Emma had already changed schools 3 times in 2 years, always moving to wherever the rent was cheapest, always the new kid, always behind because they couldn't afford tutors or supplies or any of the things that made education work for kids whose parents had money. No, Nathan said, making a promise he had no idea how to keep. You're not changing schools. Emma nodded and closed her eyes again. Nathan sat on the floor next to the couch and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Hayes? This is Michael Richardson with Sterling Legal Associates. I need you to come to our offices tonight at 8 p.m. for the reading of Charles Sterling's will. Your presence is required. Address below. Nathan read the message 3 times. It didn't make any more sense the 3rd time. He texted back, I think you have the wrong person. The response came immediately. No mistake. You are specifically named in Mr. Sterling's will. Please confirm attendance. Nathan stared at his phone like it had just grown teeth. Charles Sterling's will. The billionaire who died 3 weeks ago. The man Nathan had never met, never spoken to, had absolutely no connection to whatsoever. Except, Nathan's brain caught up with itself. 4 years ago. The parking garage. The night that had ended his career and changed everything. No, that was impossible. That man had been just some guy. Just someone who needed help. Nathan had stayed because that's what you did when you found someone dying alone in a freezing parking garage. He'd called 911, kept him conscious, refused to leave until the paramedics arrived. He'd never even known the man's name. Had he? Nathan pulled out his laptop, 7 years old, held together with electrical tape and hope, and searched for images of Charles Sterling. The first photo that came up was from a charity gala 2 years ago. Charles Sterling standing next to his daughter, both of them in formal wear, both of them looking like money and power made flesh. Nathan's hands started shaking. He knew that face. Older now, more tired, but definitely the same man who'd grabbed Nathan's hand in that parking garage and whispered thank you before the paramedics took him away. "Oh my God," Nathan said out loud. Emma stirred on the couch. "Daddy?" "It's okay, baby. Go back to sleep." She did. Nathan kept staring at the photo. At 7:45 p.m., he left Emma with Mrs. Chen from downstairs, 78 years old, kind, didn't ask questions when Nathan said he needed 2 hours, and took the train to downtown. Sterling Legal Associates occupied the entire 40th floor of a building 3 blocks from Sterling Crest Holdings. Nathan walked into a lobby that looked like it had been decorated by someone who charged by the hour, gave his name to the receptionist, and tried not to think about the fact that he was still wearing his facility's uniform because it was the only clean thing he owned. The receptionist didn't seem to notice, or care. Just led him down a hallway lined with oil paintings and into a conference room where Evelyn Sterling sat at the head of the table. She looked up when Nathan walked in. For exactly 5 seconds, neither of them moved. Then recognition hit her face like a slap. "What the hell is he doing here?" Evelyn's voice was ice and fury. "Michael, what is this?" Michael Richardson, late 50s, expensive suit, the kind of calm that came from handling rich people's problems for 30 years, gestured to an empty chair. "Mr. Hayes, please sit down. Ms. Sterling, I'll explain everything shortly." "Explain now." Evelyn's eyes never left Nathan. "I fired this man this morning. He has no business being anywhere near my father's will." "Your father specifically requested his presence," Michael said, "and specifically included him in the will itself. So yes, Ms. Sterling, he has every business being here." The silence that followed could have cut steel. Nathan sat down. Evelyn looked like she wanted to flip the table. Michael opened a leather folder and began to read. What happened next would change everything. Michael Richardson adjusted his reading glasses and cleared his throat like he was about to deliver news that would ruin someone's day. Given the temperature in the room, Nathan figured that was probably accurate. "Before we begin," Michael said, "I want to make clear that everything I'm about to read was written by Charles Sterling himself, witnessed by 2 independent attorneys, and filed with the state 6 months before his death. This is ironclad. Legal challenges will fail." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I'm not challenging anything. Just read it." "The will is extensive, so I'll summarize the major points first, then provide detail where necessary." Michael glanced at Nathan, then back at Evelyn. "The estate is valued at approximately $2.3 billion, including all holdings, properties, and liquid assets." Nathan's brain stuttered on that number. Billion. With a B. More money than he could conceptualize, more money than seemed real. "Charitable donations account for approximately $400 million, Michael continued. "Various bequests to longtime employees and associates account for another $75 million. The remaining assets are divided between 2 primary beneficiaries." Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "2? Evelyn Sterling receives 74% of Sterling Crest Holdings, the Lake Forest estate, the Naples property, and controlling interest in all subsidiary companies. Total value approximately $1.4 billion. The way Michael said it, flat, matter-of-fact, made it sound almost boring, like he was reading a grocery list instead of describing enough wealth to fund a small country. Evelyn nodded once. "And the rest?" Michael looked directly at Nathan. Nathan Hayes receives 18% of Sterling Crest Holdings, the Aspen residence, and a cash settlement of $45 million. The room went completely silent. Nathan heard the words, understood them individually, but strung together like that, they didn't mean anything. Couldn't mean anything. Because 18% of a multi-billion-dollar company and $45 million in cash was the kind of number that existed in movies, not in the real world where he scrubbed toilets for minimum wage. I'm sorry, Nathan said quietly. What? Evelyn stood up so fast her chair shot backward. This is insane. Michael, this is absolutely insane. He's lying. He manipulated my father somehow. Ms. Sterling, please sit down. I will not sit down. This man worked as a janitor in our building for 6 months. 6 months. And you're telling me my father left him almost a fifth of his entire company? That's not possible. It's fraud. It's It's legally binding, Michael said, and his voice had gone hard. And if you'll let me finish reading, you'll understand why. Evelyn stayed standing, but she stopped talking. Her hands were shaking. Nathan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just sat there trying to process information that his brain kept rejecting as impossible. Michael pulled out a second document, handwritten pages in a clear, elegant script. Your father left letters for both of you. Ms. Sterling, yours is 12 pages. Mr. Hayes, yours is 4. But before I distribute them, Charles asked me to read the section aloud. He felt it was important you both hear it together. He cleared his throat again and began reading. To my daughter Evelyn, and to Nathan Hayes, who saved my life when he had every reason to walk away. I am writing this 6 months before my projected death. Yes, Evelyn, I know when I'm dying, the doctors were quite clear, because I need you both to understand why I've structured my estate this way. Evelyn, you are brilliant, driven, and capable of running Sterling Crest better than I ever did, but you've also inherited my worst traits. My coldness, my inability to see people as anything other than assets or obstacles. I taught you how to build power. I failed to teach you how to be human. Evelyn's face had gone white. Michael kept reading. 4 years ago, I had a massive heart attack in a parking garage during a winter storm. I was alone, dying. Certain I would die alone because that's what happens when you spend your entire life valuing money over people. Then a stranger found me, Nathan Hayes. He didn't know who I was, didn't care, just refused to leave me lying on that freezing concrete while I waited for paramedics who might not arrive in time. He held my hand, talked to me, kept me conscious, saved my life. Nathan's throat tightened. He remembered that night, the smell of exhaust and ice, the man's labored breathing, the way his hand had gripped Nathan's like a lifeline. Afterward, I had him investigated. Not because I'm paranoid, though I am, but because I wanted to know who this person was. What I learned changed everything I thought I understood about character. Nathan Hayes was a senior systems engineer, brilliant career, beautiful family. Then his wife got cancer, and he gave up everything to take care of her and their daughter. Lost his job, lost his house, lost his entire life. But he never lost his humanity. Michael paused, glanced at both of them, then continued. A year after he saved my life, Nathan discovered financial corruption in a construction project tied to Sterling Crest Holdings. He could have ignored it. Should have, given his situation. Instead, he reported it to the authorities and testified in the investigation. It cost him the few industry connections he had left, made him unemployable. I found out about it through our legal team, and I was ashamed. Ashamed that this man had more integrity in his worst moment than I'd had in my entire career. But Evelyn was staring at the table now, not moving, so I helped him, anonymously. His daughter Emma has severe asthma and a lung condition that requires expensive medication. I arranged for certain medical bills to be paid through charitable foundations. Made sure Emma's treatments were covered when insurance failed. Not because I'm generous, I'm not, but because I owed Nathan Hayes a debt I could never fully repay. He saved my life twice. Once in that parking garage, and once by showing me what real courage looked like. Nathan felt something hot behind his eyes. He blinked hard, refusing to let it become anything more, which brings me to this will. Evelyn, you're getting the majority of Sterling Crest Holdings because you've earned it. But Nathan is getting 18% for a different reason. I'm forcing you to work together. Nathan understands things about business ethics and human dignity that I never taught you. And you understand corporate strategy and leadership in ways he never learned. Together, you might build something better than what I'm leaving behind. Or you'll destroy each other trying. Either way, it will be more interesting than watching you run the company exactly the way I did. Michael set the pages down. Nobody spoke. Nathan's hands were shaking now. The man he'd helped 4 years ago, the man whose name he'd never even known, had been Charles Sterling, had tracked him down, had paid for Emma's treatments, had left him enough money to never worry about rent or medical bills or whether his daughter would have to change schools again, had seen him as more than a janitor. "There's more," Michael said quietly, "but the rest is in your individual letters. I'll give you both some privacy to read them." He stood, placed 2 sealed envelopes on the table, one thick, one thin, and walked out of the conference room. The door closed. Nathan and Evelyn sat in complete silence. Finally, Evelyn picked up her envelope. Her hands were still trembling. "This is impossible," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. She just sounded tired. "You can't actually be... I fired you this morning." "I know. And now you own almost 1/5 of my company." "I don't want it," Nathan said. Evelyn's eyes snapped to his face. "What?" "I don't want any of this. I didn't ask for it. I didn't even know your father knew who I was." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, feeling exhausted down to his bones. "I can't run a company. I can barely keep my own life together. So whatever you're worried about, hostile takeover, power play, whatever, you can stop. I'm not interested." "Then why are you here?" "Because the lawyer said I had to be." They stared at each other. Evelyn looked different than she had this morning. Smaller, somehow. The perfect composure had cracked, and underneath it was just a woman who'd lost her father and found out he'd been keeping massive secrets from her. "The parking garage," she said slowly. "That was you?" Nathan nodded. "He never told me. Never mentioned it once." Her voice was quiet now, almost fragile. "He had a heart attack 4 years ago. I knew that. He told me he was fine, that someone had called 911, that it wasn't serious. Then he went back to work 3 days later like nothing happened." "Sounds like him," Nathan said, though he had no idea if that was true. "And the corruption investigation, the construction fraud." Evelyn was staring at him like she was trying to see through his skull. "That was you too?" "I found some accounting irregularities in a project I was consulting on. Reported them. Turned out it was bigger than I thought." "Sterling Crest Holdings lost $40 million in that investigation," Evelyn said. "We had to terminate contracts, fire executives, restructure 3 departments. It was a nightmare." "I know. You destroyed people's careers." "They were stealing money," Nathan said flatly. "Yeah, I destroyed their careers. They deserved it." Evelyn's mouth opened, closed. She looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't figure out how. "My father respected that," she said finally. "The fact that you did it anyway, even knowing what it would cost you." "Your father paid for my daughter's medical treatments for 2 years. I didn't know it was him until about 20 minutes ago, but yeah, I'd say he understood." The silence stretched out again. Evelyn picked up her envelope, then set it down without opening it. "I don't know what to do with this," she said, and for the first time since Nathan had met her, she sounded almost human, lost. "I don't know what he wanted from me." "Read the letter," Nathan said. "Maybe it'll help." She looked at him for a long moment, then opened the envelope. Nathan did the same. His letter was shorter. Only 4 pages in that same elegant handwriting. He started reading. The first 2 pages were personal. Charles talking about the night in the parking garage, about how terrified he'd been, about how Nathan's presence had been the only thing keeping him from complete panic. He wrote about investigating Nathan afterward, about feeling ashamed of his own wealth when he saw how this good man was struggling just to survive. The 3rd page was about Emma. Charles had never met her, but he'd read medical reports, tracked her treatments, watched from a distance as Nathan fought to keep his daughter alive on an income that should have made that impossible. He wrote about being moved by that kind of love, about wishing he'd been that kind of father to Evelyn instead of the cold, distant man who'd valued business over everything else. The 4th page made Nathan's throat close up completely. "Nathan, I'm leaving you this money and these shares not because I think you'll use them wisely, though I believe you will, but because you deserve a life where financial survival isn't a daily battle. where Emma can get the medical care she needs without you having to choose between her health and keeping the lights on, where you can breathe. I'm also forcing you into proximity with my daughter because she needs someone in her life who hasn't been corrupted by wealth and power. Someone who understands that money is a tool, not a replacement for humanity. You saved my life twice. Let me try to save yours once. And if you can save Evelyn from becoming the cold, lonely person I was, I'll consider us even. Charles. Nathan folded the letter carefully and set it on the table. His hands were shaking worse now. Across from him, Evelyn was reading her own letter and tears were running down her face. She didn't seem to notice, just kept reading, page after page, her perfect composure completely shattered. When she finally finished, she set the pages down and pressed both hands over her mouth like she was trying to hold something back. Nathan didn't say anything, just waited. He thought I was lonely, Evelyn said, her voice muffled behind her hands. He thought I was turning into him, cold and empty and incapable of caring about anything except the company. She lowered her hands. Her makeup was ruined, black streaks running down her cheeks. He was right. Nathan had no idea what to say to that. I fired you this morning because I was humiliated and needed someone to hurt, Evelyn continued. I didn't even look at you, didn't care that you might have a family or bills or a life that depended on that job. You were just convenient, a target. Yeah, Nathan said quietly. You were. And now I find out you're the person my father respected most in the world. The man who saved his life, who sacrificed your career for your principles, who's been raising a sick child on nothing while I've been... She gestured vaguely at herself, at the room, at everything. This. You didn't know, Nathan said. That's not an excuse. No, but it's a reason. Evelyn wiped at her face, smearing the mascara worse. What did his letters say to you? Nathan hesitated, then slid the 4 pages across the table. Evelyn read them in silence. When she finished, she looked at Nathan with something that might have been wonder or might have been horror. He paid for your daughter's medical treatments. Apparently. For 2 years. I thought it was some kind of charity program. The bills would just disappear. Get marked as covered by anonymous donations. I tried to figure out where the money was coming from, but the foundation was structured so you couldn't trace it. That's very like him, Evelyn said softly. He helped people, but only if they never knew it was him. Pride, maybe. Or control. Hard to tell the difference with my father. She handed the letter back. They sat in silence again, but it felt different now. Less hostile. More like 2 people trying to figure out how they'd ended up in the same wreckage. I don't know how to do this, Evelyn said finally. Work with you, share the company, any of it. Neither do I. You really don't want the shares? I want my daughter to be able to breathe without me having a panic attack every time she coughs, Nathan said. I want to stop choosing between rent and food. I want to sleep for 8 hours without waking up in a cold sweat about money. Beyond that, I have no idea what I want. Evelyn almost smiled. It didn't quite make it to her face, but Nathan could see the ghost of it. That's more honest than most people in my life have been in years. Yeah, well, I'm too tired to lie. Good. Evelyn stood up, collected her letter, and walked toward the door. Then she stopped and turned back. I'm sorry. For firing you, for not seeing you, for being exactly the kind of person my father was warning me not to become. Nathan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who was just as lost as he was, just in a different way. Apology accepted, he said. She nodded and left. Nathan sat alone in the conference room for another 10 minutes, staring at the letter in his hands and trying to make sense of a world where he was suddenly rich. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Chen. Emma's fever is up. You should come home. Nathan was out the door before his brain could catch up with his body. The train ride back to Pilsen took 40 minutes, and every second felt like drowning. Emma got fevers sometimes after bad asthma attacks, her body's stress response to not being able to breathe properly. Usually, they broke on their own. Sometimes they didn't. Nathan burst into the apartment at 9:20 p.m. to find Mrs. Chen sitting next to the couch where Emma was bundled under every blanket they owned, shivering despite the space heater running at full blast. How high? Nathan asked. 103.4 when I checked 10 minutes ago. Nathan pressed his hand to Emma's forehead. She was burning up. Hey, baby, he said softly. How you feeling? Emma opened her eyes. Cold. I know. I'm going to get your medicine, okay? Just stay still. He grabbed the fever reducer from the bathroom, liquid acetaminophen, generic brand because it was $3 cheaper, and measured out the dose. Emma swallowed it without complaint. She'd been doing this long enough that she didn't fight medication anymore, just accepted it as part of being alive. Nathan thanked Mrs. Chen, pressed $20 into her hand despite her protests, and waited until she left before letting himself start to panic. 103.4 was high, not emergency room immediately high, but close. If it didn't come down in the next hour, he'd have to take her in, and the ER meant another bill he couldn't pay, another mark on their credit, another step closer to the edge. Except Nathan pulled out his phone and looked at the email Michael Richardson had sent him before he left the office. Account information, transfer details, a number with so many zeros it looked fake, $45 million. Emma wouldn't have to suffer because they were poor anymore. Wouldn't have to go without treatments or medications or doctor visits because insurance didn't cover them. Wouldn't have to watch her father choose between her health and keeping a roof over their heads. Nathan sat down on the floor next to the couch and took Emma's hand. I need to tell you something, he said. Emma looked at him with those big, tired eyes. Are we in trouble? No, baby. The opposite. We're going to be okay. Better than okay. Did you get a new job? Something like that. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. Remember how I told you I helped someone a long time ago? Someone who was sick? Emma nodded. Turns out that person was really important and really grateful, and he left us some money. A lot of money. How much? Enough that you never have to worry about medicine again. Enough that we can move somewhere warm where your lungs don't hurt all winter. Enough that Daddy doesn't have to work 3 jobs anymore. Emma processed this for a moment. Is it real? Yeah, baby, it's real. Are you sure? Nathan laughed, and it came out half sob. I'm sure. Emma closed her eyes. Good. I'm tired of being poor. Me too, baby. Me too. He sat with her until her fever broke around midnight, until her breathing evened out and the color came back to her face. Then he carried her to bed, their bed, since the apartment only had 1 bedroom and Nathan slept on the couch, and tucked her in with the blanket Jennifer had made before she got too sick to use her hands. Then he went into the bathroom, closed the door, and cried for the first time since the funeral. Not sad crying, not grief, just release. The kind of crying that came from holding everything together for so long that you forgot what it felt like to let go. When he finally stopped, he washed his face, looked at himself in the mirror, and barely recognized the person staring back. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, his daughter was sleeping peacefully, and that was enough. He went back to the couch and lay down in the dark, listening to the space heater rattle and hum. His phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. This is Evelyn Sterling. Michael gave me your contact information. We need to meet tomorrow to discuss next steps. Does 10 a.m. work? Nathan stared at the message. The woman who'd fired him this morning was now asking to meet with him like they were colleagues, partners, equals. He texted back, Where? The response came immediately. Not my office, somewhere neutral. There's a coffee shop on Wells Street called Bitter Grounds. Do you know it? Nathan knew it. Expensive place where people paid $7 for coffee and worked on laptops in corners. Not somewhere he'd ever been able to afford. I'll be there, he texted. Thank you, Evelyn wrote back. Then, after a pause, and Nathan, I meant what I said earlier. I'm sorry. Nathan set the phone down without responding. He didn't know if he believed her apology. Didn't know if it mattered. All he knew was that in less than 24 hours, his entire life had been disassembled and rebuilt into something he didn't recognize. Tomorrow, he'd start figuring out what that meant. Tonight, he just needed to sleep. The space heater rattled on. Outside, Chicago was freezing. Inside, for the first time in years, Nathan Hayes felt warm. Nathan woke up at 6 a.m. out of habit, reached for his phone to check the time, and remembered he didn't have a job to get to anymore. The apartment was freezing again. The space heater had shut off sometime during the night, probably overheated, or maybe just gave up, and pale gray light was leaking through the thin curtains. Emma was still asleep, her breathing steady and quiet. The fever had stayed down. Nathan lay on the couch for another 10 minutes, staring at the water stain on the ceiling and trying to process the fact that he had $45 million. It still didn't feel real. Money like that existed in a completely different universe than the one where he worried about whether he could afford the generic brand of bread. He kept expecting to wake up and find out it was some kind of mistake, some cosmic clerical error that would get corrected and leave him exactly where he'd been yesterday morning. But his phone still had Evelyn Sterling's text message on it, and the email from Michael Richardson with all the account information and legal documents, and a growing sense that his life had just been picked up and shaken like a snow globe. He got up, checked on Emma, still sleeping, still breathing fine, and took a shower that ran cold after 90 seconds because the building's water heater was as broken as everything else in this place. By 8:30, he was dressed in the only decent clothes he owned: jeans without holes, a button-down shirt he'd bought at Goodwill for $4, a jacket that didn't quite fit but was warm enough. He looked like exactly what he was, a poor man trying to dress like he belonged in a room with a billionaire. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch Emma again. Nathan left her another $20 and promised he'd be back by noon. Then he took the train downtown and tried not to throw up from nerves. Bitter Grounds was the kind of coffee shop that made you feel poor just walking past it. All exposed brick and reclaimed wood, with pendant lights that probably cost more than Nathan's monthly rent hanging over tables where people in expensive coats typed on laptops and pretended to work. The menu was printed on a chalkboard in handwriting so aggressively quirky it was almost hostile. Nathan walked in at exactly 10 a.m. and immediately spotted Evelyn. She was sitting at a corner table wearing black again. Different black, less severe, more like actual morning clothes than the architectural armor she'd worn yesterday. Her hair was down. No makeup that Nathan could see. She looked younger like this. Tired. Almost normal. She saw him and raised one hand in a small wave. Nathan walked over and sat down across from her. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. "I already ordered you coffee," Evelyn said finally. "I didn't know what you liked, so I got you the same thing I'm drinking. If you hate it, we can get you something else." "I'm sure it's fine." A server appeared with 2 cups and set them down. Nathan looked at his coffee, something pale and complicated with foam on top, and figured it probably cost more than he used to make in an hour. He took a sip. It was good. Too good. The kind of good that made you angry you'd been drinking gas station coffee your whole life. "Thank you," he said. Evelyn wrapped both hands around her cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "I didn't sleep last night." "Yeah, me neither. I kept reading my father's letter over and over, like if I read it enough times it would say something different." She looked up at Nathan. "It didn't." "What did it say?" Evelyn was quiet for a moment, deciding how much to share. That he was proud of what I'd accomplished, that I was a better CEO than he ever was, and that I'd become exactly the kind of person he'd spent his whole life being, which was his biggest failure as a father. Nathan winced. "That's rough." "It's true." Evelyn took a sip of her coffee. "He wrote 12 pages about how he taught me to be brilliant and ruthless and effective, but he never taught me to care about anything except winning. How he watched me turn into this cold, isolated person who treats people like chess pieces. How he hoped leaving you part of the company would force me to learn what he never did." "No pressure," Nathan said. Evelyn almost smiled. "Right? Just casually destroy my daughter's entire worldview, and maybe she'll become a better person." Very typical of him, actually. He never did anything small. "I'm not going to fix you," Nathan said bluntly. "Just so we're clear. I'm not some magical poor person who's going to teach you the true meaning of life or whatever. I'm just trying to keep my kid alive and maybe figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do with all this money." "Good," Evelyn said, "because I don't want to be fixed. I want to figure out how to run this company without destroying everyone around me in the process." Nathan studied her face. She meant it, or at least thought she did. "Okay," he said. "So where do we start?" Evelyn pulled out a tablet and opened a document. "I had our legal team draw up a preliminary partnership agreement. It outlines voting rights, decision-making processes, profit distribution, all the technical details. Michael will walk us through it properly, but the basic structure is this. I maintain operational control as CEO. You have full veto power on any major decision, and we both have to sign off on anything involving employee welfare or corporate ethics." Nathan blinked. You drew this up in one night? I didn't sleep, remember? And I had help. My assistant is terrifyingly efficient. Evelyn slid the tablet across the table. Read through it. Tell me what concerns you. Nathan scrolled through the document. It was dense, pages of legal language that made his eyes cross. But the basic framework was clear enough. Evelyn was offering him real power, not just symbolic ownership. The ability to actually change how Sterling Crest operated. This gives me a lot of control, Nathan said slowly. 18% gives you a lot of control, Evelyn corrected. This just formalizes it. And honestly, I think my father was right. I need someone who'll tell me when I'm being terrible. Everyone else in my life is either too scared or too invested in my success to push back. I fired you yesterday for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, she continued. Didn't think twice about it. Didn't care what it would do to your life. That's who I am right now. Someone who hurts people reflexively because I can, because there are no consequences. But if you're sitting across from me at every board meeting with the power to block decisions you think are wrong, she trailed off. Maybe I'll think twice. Nathan set the tablet down. You're asking me to be your conscience. I'm asking you to be my business partner. If that comes with a conscience, great. If not, at least you'll keep me from doing illegal things. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. Look, I know this is weird. I know we have no reason to trust each other. But my father thought we could make this work, and he was usually right about people, so I'm willing to try if you are. Nathan thought about Emma, about medical bills and rent, and the constant crushing weight of poverty, about the fact that he could walk away from all of this, sell his shares, take the money, disappear, but that wasn't what Charles Sterling had wanted. The man had saved Emma's life from a distance for 2 years, had seen something in Nathan worth investing in. Okay, Nathan said. I'm in, but I have conditions. Name them. First, I need everything in plain English. No legal jargon, no corporate speak. If I'm signing something or voting on something, I need to actually understand what it means. Evelyn nodded. Done. What else? Second, I want to start small. I don't know anything about running a billion-dollar company. I'll learn, but I'm not making major decisions until I understand what I'm deciding about. That's reasonable. What's third? Nathan hesitated. I want to know why you really fired me yesterday. Not the surface reason. The real one. Evelyn's expression shifted. For a second, Nathan thought she might deflect or lie. Instead, she looked down at her coffee and said, Because my father died 3 weeks ago and I haven't cried about it once. Because everyone at that memorial was talking about what a great man he was, how much he accomplished, how he changed Chicago forever. And all I could think about was how he never once told me he loved me. How the last conversation we had was about quarterly earnings. How I spent 30 years trying to be exactly what he wanted. And apparently what he wanted was for me to be someone completely different. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. So when I fell in front of all those people, she continued, I needed someone to blame, someone to hurt. Because if I was hurting someone else, I didn't have to think about how much I was hurting. And you were there. Convenient. She looked up at Nathan. That's the real reason. I'm a coward who attacks people instead of dealing with my own pain. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. That's the most honest thing anyone's said to me in years, he said finally. Yeah, well, you asked. I did. Nathan picked up his coffee. For what it's worth, my wife died 2 years ago, and I still can't look at photos of her without feeling like someone's crushing my chest. I have no idea how to process grief that big. So I just don't. I focus on Emma and work and survival, and I pretend the grief doesn't exist until it ambushes me at 2 a.m. Evelyn watched him carefully. Does that work? Not even a little bit. She almost smiled again. At least you're honest about it. They sat in silence for a while, drinking expensive coffee in a room full of people who had no idea that the two of them were having the strangest partnership negotiation in corporate history. Finally, Evelyn said, I want to show you something. Are you free this afternoon? Depends. What am I looking at? Sterling Crest, the actual company. Not just the executive floors. I want you to see what we do, who we employ, how everything works. If you're going to have veto power over major decisions, you should probably know what you're deciding about. Nathan thought about Emma, about the fact that Mrs. Chen could only watch her for a few more hours. I need to be home by 3. My daughter gets out of school at 3:30. We'll be done by 2, Evelyn said. I promise. Nathan pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Chen, asking if she could stay until 3. She texted back immediately. Of course, sweetheart. Take your time. Okay, Nathan said. Show me. Evelyn stood up, left cash on the table, way too much cash, the kind of tip that suggested money was meaningless, and led Nathan out into the freezing Chicago morning. They took her car. Not a limo or anything ostentatious, just a black Mercedes that probably cost more than Nathan's entire life up to this point. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive. Nathan felt like he was going to break something just by sitting in it. Evelyn drove with the focused intensity of someone who'd learned in a European racing school. They headed south, away from the downtown towers, into neighborhoods that got progressively more industrial. Sterling Crest has 6 major divisions, Evelyn said as she drove. Real estate development, construction management, infrastructure consulting, technology services, property management, and investment holdings. We employ about 4,000 people total, with another 6,000 contractors and subcontractors. My father built most of it from scratch over 40 years. That's a lot of people, Nathan said. It is. And I'm responsible for all of them. Evelyn turned down a side street. This is our main construction yard. We store equipment here, dispatch crews, manage logistics for active projects. She pulled into a parking lot surrounded by chain-link fence. The yard was massive. Acres of building materials, vehicles, machinery. Workers in hard hats and safety vests moved between piles of steel and concrete, operating forklifts, checking manifests, loading trucks. Evelyn parked and got out. Nathan followed. The cold hit immediately. Wind screamed across the open lot, carrying ice crystals that felt like tiny knives. Workers hunched against it, moving fast to stay warm. Most of these guys work outside year-round, Evelyn said, leading Nathan toward a small office building at the edge of the yard. 12-hour shifts, union wages, decent benefits. We pay better than most construction companies in the city. That's good, Nathan said. Is it? Evelyn glanced at him. Because I don't actually know. I set compensation based on market rates and profitability margins. I've never asked if it's enough to actually live on. They entered the office building. Inside, it was barely warmer than outside. A woman in her 50s sat behind a desk, doing paperwork with hands that had tape on 2 fingers, the cheap kind you used when you couldn't afford Band-Aids. She looked up when they entered, and her eyes went wide. Ms. Sterling, she said, standing up quickly. I didn't know you were coming. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Maria. I'm just showing Mr. Hayes around. This is Nathan Hayes. He's a new partner in the company. Maria's expression shifted to polite confusion. Partner? Long story, Nathan said. Nice to meet you. You too. Maria was still standing, clearly uncomfortable. Did you need something? Files or reports or... Actually, Nathan said, can I ask you a question? Maria glanced at Evelyn nervously. Sure? Do you like working here? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Yes? I mean, it's a job, pays the bills. But do you like it? Nathan pressed gently. If you could change something about how this place operates, what would it be? Maria looked at Evelyn again, clearly trying to figure out if this was some kind of test. It's okay, Evelyn said quietly. You can be honest. I want to know. Maria hesitated for a long moment. Then she said, the heat. This building has terrible insulation, and the heating system barely works. We're freezing all winter. Some of the guys bring space heaters from home, but management says they're a fire hazard and makes us unplug them, so we just freeze. Nathan looked at Evelyn. Evelyn's jaw was tight. Why wasn't this reported? It was, Maria said carefully. 3 times. Facilities said fixing it wasn't in the budget. We were told to dress warmer. Who told you that? I don't remember his name, someone from facilities management. Evelyn pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. It's in the budget now. We'll have someone out here to fix the heating system by the end of the week. Maria blinked. Really? Really. And if anyone tells you it's not a priority, you call me directly. Evelyn pulled out a business card and handed it over. That's my personal number. Use it. Maria took the card like it was made of gold. Thank you, Ms. Sterling. Thank you so much. They left the office and walked back across the frozen lot toward the car. Neither of them spoke until they were inside. I didn't know about the heating, Evelyn said finally. Her voice was tight. I should have known, but I didn't. You can't know everything, Nathan said. I should know that my employees are freezing in their own building because someone in facilities decided it wasn't worth the money to fix. Evelyn's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. That's exactly what my father was talking about. I'm so focused on profit margins and market share that I don't see the people actually doing the work. Nathan didn't argue. She was right. They drove to 3 more locations over the next 2 hours. A property management office where the staff worked in cubicles so cramped they could barely move. A technology services division where half the equipment was outdated and glitchy. A real estate development office where the break room didn't have a working refrigerator and people had to throw away their lunches every day because there was nowhere to store them. Every stop revealed small indignities, things that weren't catastrophic but wore people down over time. Things that could be fixed easily if anyone with power bothered to notice. At each location, Evelyn asked the same question. If you could change one thing, what would it be? And every time people answered carefully at first, then with increasing honesty when they realized she was actually listening. By the time they got back in the car for the last time, Evelyn looked like she'd been hit by a truck. I've been CEO for 3 years, she said quietly. 3 years. And I had no idea any of this was happening. You're learning now, Nathan said. That's not good enough. Evelyn started the car but didn't pull out of the parking lot, just sat there gripping the wheel. My father left you part of this company because he knew I couldn't see these things. Because he knew I'd keep running Sterling Crest exactly the way he did, efficiently, profitably, and completely blind to everything that didn't show up on a balance sheet. So change it, Nathan said. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. He checked the time on his phone, 2:15. I need to get home. Emma gets out of school soon. Evelyn nodded and finally pulled out of the lot. They drove back toward Pilsen in silence. When Evelyn turned onto Nathan's street, she'd gotten the address from his employment file. She slowed down, clearly taking in the neighborhood. The buildings with broken windows, the cars with expired tags, the corner store with bars on the windows and graffiti on the walls. She parked in front of Nathan's building. This is where you live? She asked quietly. For now, Nathan said. Probably not for much longer given the whole $45 million thing. Evelyn looked at the building. 4 stories of crumbling brick, trash piled by the entrance, a front door that didn't quite close all the way. The heat doesn't work here either, does it? Not well. And you were working for minimum wage, supporting a daughter with serious medical needs, living here. It wasn't a question, just Evelyn processing information. How did you survive? Barely, Nathan said, honestly. I had 3 different credit cards maxed out. Emma's medications came from Canada because they were cheaper. We ate a lot of ramen, and every winter I was terrified she'd have an asthma attack I couldn't afford to treat. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. I fired you for something that wasn't your fault, and it could have killed your daughter. Yeah, Nathan said, it could have. I'm sorry, Evelyn said again, and this time her voice broke on it. I'm so sorry. I know, Nathan said. He opened the car door. I'll see you Monday. We can start figuring out the partnership stuff then. Nathan, he turned back. Thank you, Evelyn said, for giving me a chance. I don't deserve it, but thank you. Nathan nodded and got out of the car. He watched her drive away, then climbed the stairs to his apartment where Mrs. Chen was reading to Emma on the couch. Emma looked up when he came in. How was your meeting with the billionaire lady? Weird, Nathan said honestly, but maybe good weird. Mrs. Chen gathered her things and left with another round of thanks and refusal to accept more money. Nathan sat down next to Emma and pulled her into a hug. I need to tell you something else, he said. About the money. Emma looked up at him. What? We're going to move. Somewhere warm where you can breathe better. Somewhere with heat that actually works. When? Soon. I need to figure some things out first, but soon. Emma processed this. Can I have my own room? Nathan laughed. Yeah, baby, you can have your own room. And a bed that doesn't have springs poking through? And a bed that doesn't have springs poking through. Emma hugged him tighter. Okay, that sounds good. They sat together on the broken couch in the freezing apartment, and Nathan felt something shift inside him. Not hope exactly. Hope felt too dangerous, too much like something that could be taken away. But maybe possibility. The sense that things might actually get better instead of just getting worse at different speeds. His phone buzzed. Email from Michael Richardson with the subject line, "First transfer complete." Nathan opened it. The email contained a single sentence and an attachment. The sentence read, "Initial funds have been deposited to your account as discussed. Full breakdown attached." Nathan opened the attachment. $5 million. Transferred that morning while he'd been drinking expensive coffee and touring construction yards. Just sitting there in an account with his name on it. Real, actual, money he could touch. He sat there staring at the number until Emma poked him. "Daddy, you okay?" "Yeah," Nathan said, his voice rough. "Yeah, I'm okay." He was better than okay. For the first time in 2 years, Nathan Hayes could breathe. Emma's phone alarm went off. Time for her afternoon medication. Nathan got up to get it, moving through the familiar routine, but everything felt different now. The generic prescription bottle in his hand would be the last generic one. Next time, Emma would get the name-brand medication her doctor had actually prescribed, but they'd never been able to afford. Next time, she'd get the best care available. Not just whatever Nathan could scrape together. He handed her the pill and a glass of water. She took it without complaint, like always. "I love you," Nathan said. "Love you too, Daddy." Outside, snow started falling again. Soft at first, then heavier. Chicago disappearing under white. Nathan's phone buzzed one more time. Text from Evelyn. "I'm having the heating system in your building fixed. Should be done by tomorrow. Consider it a down payment on all the apologies I owe you." Nathan stared at the message, texted back, "You don't have to do that." Her response came immediately. "I know. I'm doing it anyway. See you Monday." Nathan set his phone down and looked around the apartment, at the water-stained ceiling and the broken space heater and the windows that let in cold air around the edges. At Emma curled up under blankets on the couch, her breathing steady and quiet. At the life they'd been living for 2 years. By Monday, he'd start learning how to run a company, how to be a partner to someone who was trying to learn how to be human, how to use money and power for something other than just survival. But tonight, he just needed to be Emma's father. He sat back down on the couch and pulled her close. "Want to watch something?" he asked. "Can we watch the Penguin documentary?" "Absolutely." Nathan queued it up on his laptop, ancient, held together with hope, and they watched penguins waddle across Antarctic ice while snow fell on Chicago, and heat that actually worked would arrive tomorrow and everything, somehow, was going to be okay. The heating system in Nathan's building got fixed on Saturday morning by a crew that showed up at 7 a.m. with new equipment and the kind of efficiency that only came from someone being paid extra to make it happen fast. By noon, the apartment was actually warm. Emma stood in the middle of the living room in just her t-shirt and pajama pants, arms spread wide, face tilted toward the ceiling vent. "It's so warm," she said, voice full of wonder. "Daddy, it's actually warm." Nathan sat on the couch watching her, trying not to think about how many winters she'd spent shivering under blankets because the heat didn't work, and he couldn't afford to move. How many times she'd gotten sick because their apartment was barely warmer than the street outside. "Yeah, baby," he said. "It's warm." She spun in a circle, laughing, and Nathan felt something crack open in his chest. His phone buzzed. Text from Evelyn. "Did they finish?" Nathan typed back, "Yeah, thank you. Don't thank me, just be ready Monday. We have a lot of work to do." Monday arrived faster than Nathan was prepared for. He woke up at 5 a.m., heart racing, convinced he'd made a terrible mistake. What did he know about running a company? He was a systems engineer who'd been out of the field for 2 years, spent the last 6 months pushing a mop, and now he was supposed to make decisions about a billion-dollar corporation? He got Emma ready for school, made her breakfast with actual eggs instead of the instant oatmeal they usually ate because it was cheaper, and walked her to the bus stop in air that was still freezing, but somehow felt less hostile now that he knew they had heat to come home to. "You look nervous," Emma said as they waited. "I am nervous." "Why? You're smart. You'll be good at it." Nathan looked down at his daughter, 8 years old and already more confident in him than he was in himself. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. "I've always been wise. You just don't listen." The bus pulled up. Emma hugged him quickly and climbed aboard. Nathan watched the bus pull away, then took the train downtown. Sterling Crest. Holdings looked different when you were walking in as a part owner instead of an employee who could be fired for looking at someone wrong. The security guard who'd escorted Nathan out 3 days ago nodded at him politely. The elevator that went to the executive floors didn't require a badge anymore. Michael Richardson had updated his access over the weekend. Nathan rode up to the 72nd floor and stepped out into a world he'd only seen while pushing a cleaning cart. Evelyn was waiting for him in the hallway outside the main conference room. She was back in CEO mode, tailored suit, hair pulled back, the kind of professional armor that made her look untouchable. But when she saw Nathan, something in her expression softened. "You came," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I considered the possibility." She gestured toward the conference room. "We have a board meeting in 30 minutes. I thought we should talk first." They walked into the conference room together. It was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago, a table that could seat 30 people, abstract art on the walls that Nathan was pretty sure cost more than a car. Evelyn sat down at the head of the table. Nathan took the seat to her right. "So," Evelyn said, "how much do you know about corporate board meetings?" "Approximately nothing." "Good. Honesty. That's a start." Evelyn pulled out a tablet. "Here's what you need to know. We have 12 board members total. 8 of them have been here since my father was CEO. They're loyal to the company, conservative about risk, and deeply suspicious of change. The other 4 are newer, people I brought in who understand technology and modern business practices. They're progressive, but sometimes reckless." "And which side am I on?" Nathan asked. "Neither." "That's the point." Evelyn met his eyes. "You're the person who asks if what we're doing is actually right, not just profitable. My father set this up so I'd have to listen to someone who gives a damn about more than quarterly earnings." "No pressure," Nathan said. "Tons of pressure," Evelyn corrected, "but I think you can handle it." The door opened. People started filing in, men and women in expensive suits, carrying tablets and coffee, talking in low voices about markets and projections. They all stopped when they saw Nathan. Evelyn stood up. "Everyone, this is Nathan Hayes. He's joining the board as of today. He owns 18% of Sterling Crest Holdings, which makes him the second largest shareholder after me. I expect you to treat him accordingly." The silence was heavy enough to crush glass. An older man with steel gray hair and a face like carved granite spoke first. "Evelyn, this is highly irregular. We weren't informed." "You're being informed now, Richard." Evelyn's voice could have frozen nitrogen. "Nathan is here because my father wanted him here. Unless you'd like to challenge Charles Sterling's will in court, I suggest you accept it and move on." Richard's jaw tightened, but he nodded and sat down. The others followed suit, still staring at Nathan like he was a bomb that might go off. Evelyn pulled up a presentation on the screens mounted around the room. "First item on the agenda, the Riverside Development Project. We're looking at a $200 million investment to build luxury condos on the south side. Projected ROI is 30% over 5 years. Construction would employ about 300 workers and displace roughly 50 families currently living in rent-controlled housing." She said it clinically, like the 50 families were a line item instead of people. Nathan felt his stomach turn. The board spent the next 20 minutes discussing profit margins and market analysis and zoning requirements. Nobody mentioned the families who'd be forced out. Nobody asked where they'd go or what would happen to them. Finally, one of the newer board members, a woman in her 40s named Jessica, said, "What about relocation assistance?" Richard frowned. "Relocation assistance cuts into our margins." "By how much?" Nathan asked. Everyone turned to look at him. Richard's frown deepened. "I'm sorry, who are you again?" "Nathan Hayes, second largest shareholder. And I asked you a question. How much would relocation assistance cut into our margins?" Richard glanced at Evelyn, who just stared back at him with an expression that said, "Answer the question." "Approximately 4%, Richard said finally. "If we provided moving costs and first month's rent for displaced tenants." "So we'd still profit 26%, Nathan said. "That seems like enough money to not destroy people's lives." "It's a business decision," Richard said carefully, "not a moral one." "Everything's a moral decision," Nathan said. "You're just choosing to ignore that part." The room went very quiet. Evelyn was watching Nathan with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not angry, more like curious. I agree with Nathan, she said finally. We'll include relocation assistance in the Riverside project. 4% off our margins is acceptable if it means we're not displacing families with nowhere to go. Richard looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't quite figure out how. Very well. They moved on to the next item, then the next. Nathan stayed mostly quiet, listening and learning, trying to understand how decisions got made in rooms like this. But every time someone proposed something that would hurt people to increase profit, he spoke up, and every time Evelyn backed him. The meeting ran 3 hours. By the end, half the board members looked confused, 3 looked angry, and Jessica looked like she wanted to high-five Nathan. When everyone finally filed out, Evelyn stayed behind. That was interesting, she said. I probably pissed off your entire board. Half of them, yeah. The other half are thinking maybe change isn't such a bad thing. Evelyn closed her tablet. You were right, by the way. About Riverside. I wouldn't have thought twice about those families before this week. Would have just signed off on the displacement and moved on. And now? Nathan asked. Now I'm thinking about Maria freezing in that office, and the people working in cramped cubicles, and all the ways I've been hurting people without even noticing. Evelyn stood up. Come on, I want to show you something else. They took the elevator down to the 60th floor, Human Resources and Employee Services. The department head, a woman named Patricia, met them outside the elevator. Ms. Sterling, Patricia said, clearly surprised. I wasn't expecting you. I need to see the employee wellness data, Evelyn said. Everything. Medical claims, sick days, workplace injury reports, exit interviews, all of it. Patricia's eyes widened. That's a lot of data. I'm aware. How long will it take to compile? A few days? Maybe a week? You have 48 hours, Evelyn said, and I want someone to analyze it for patterns. Who's using the most sick days? Which departments have the highest turnover? Where are we losing people and why? Patricia nodded slowly. May I ask what this is about? I'm trying to figure out if we're actually taking care of our employees or just pretending to, Evelyn said, and I need data to know the difference. They left Patricia looking bewildered and took the elevator back up. You're really doing this, Nathan said. Doing what? Changing. Actually changing, not just talking about it. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. My father's letter said I was lonely, that I'd built this perfect, controlled life where nobody could hurt me because nobody could get close enough. He was right. I've been alone for so long I forgot what it felt like to actually care about anything except winning. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor. I don't know if I can fix that, Evelyn continued. Don't know if I can become someone different this late. But I can at least try to run this company like people matter. That's something. It's more than something, Nathan said. They walked back toward Evelyn's office. She paused at the door. Do you have lunch plans? She asked. I was going to grab something from the cafeteria. Come to my office. I'll have something brought up. There's more I want to talk about. Nathan followed her inside. The office was exactly what you'd expect from a billionaire CEO. Huge windows, modern furniture, art that probably belonged in a museum. But it felt empty somehow, like a hotel room instead of a place where someone actually lived part of their life. Evelyn ordered lunch, sandwiches, and soup from somewhere expensive, and they sat at the small conference table in the corner of her office. I want to create new programs, Evelyn said without preamble. Employee assistance, medical support for workers' families, emergency financial aid. I want Sterling Crest to be the kind of company that actually gives a damn about the people who work here. Nathan set down his sandwich. That's going to cost money. I'm aware. How much, I don't know yet, but I'm willing to cut executive bonuses to fund it if necessary. Your board will lose their minds. Let them. Evelyn's eyes were bright. I want you to help me design these programs. You know what it's like to need help and not get it. You know what actually matters versus what's just corporate theater. I'm not an expert in HR policy, Nathan said. No, but you're an expert in being poor and desperate and watching your kids suffer because you couldn't afford the help she needed. That's worth more than any HR degree. Nathan thought about Emma, about all the nights he'd lain awake doing impossible math, trying to figure out how to pay for medicine and rent and food with money that didn't exist. about the shame of being unable to provide for his daughter, about how many other parents were going through the same thing right now while working for companies that didn't care. Okay, he said, I'll help, but I have conditions. More conditions? Evelyn almost smiled. What are they? First, nothing performative. No programs that look good on paper but don't actually help people. Everything has to be designed for real impact. Agreed. What else? Second, we talk to the employees who'd actually use these programs, not just HR, not management, the people on the ground who know what they need. Done. Third, we move fast. I don't want this to be something we talk about for 6 months and then quietly forget. If we're doing it, we start now. Evelyn nodded. I'll have Patricia pull together focus groups. We can start meeting with employees next week, get their input, design something that actually works. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Can I ask you something? Nathan said finally. Sure. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's because of your father's letter. That's part of it, but it's not everything. Evelyn set down her soup spoon and looked out the window at Chicago sprawling 72 floors below. When I fell in that lobby, she said quietly, I was humiliated, furious, desperate to hurt someone so I could feel less powerless. And the person I hurt was you, a man who'd saved my father's life, who'd lost everything trying to do the right thing, who was working as a janitor to keep his daughter alive. And I destroyed you without a second thought because you were convenient. She turned back to Nathan. That's who I've become, she continued, someone who hurts people reflexively because I can, because there are no consequences for people like me, because I've spent so long being powerful that I forgot power should come with responsibility. Her voice cracked slightly. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be my father, brilliant and successful and completely alone because I treated everyone around me like they were disposable. Your father changed, Nathan said. At the end, he saw what he'd become and tried to fix it. By dying and leaving me a guilt trip in his will. By trying to force you to learn what he never did. It's manipulative and kind of controlling, but it came from love. Twisted love, maybe, but still love. Evelyn's eyes were wet. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. I miss him, she said. And I hate that I miss him because he was never really there to miss. Just this distant figure who taught me how to run a company and forgot to teach me how to be a person. Nathan didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. Just sat there while Evelyn fought for control. Eventually, she won. Wiped her eyes, took a breath, became the CEO again. Sorry, she said. That was unprofessional. It was human, Nathan corrected. There's a difference. Evelyn almost smiled. You're going to be insufferable, aren't you? Always calling me out when I'm being terrible. That's literally what your father hired me for. Yeah, well, he had a sick sense of humor. They finished lunch and spent the rest of the afternoon working through preliminary ideas for employee programs. Medical assistance for workers' children, emergency loans with no interest, mental health services, childcare support. All the things that would have changed Nathan's life if they'd existed when he needed them. By 6 p.m., they had the skeleton of a plan. I'll have legal draft the framework, Evelyn said. We can present it to the board next month. They're going to fight you on this, Nathan warned. Let them. I own 56% of voting shares. They can complain all they want, but I can push this through if I have to. Nathan stood to leave. I need to get home. Emma's probably wondering where I am. How is she? Evelyn asked. Your daughter, is she doing better? Yeah, the heat in our building actually works now, so that helps. Nathan paused. Thank you for that. You didn't have to. I did, actually. I destroyed your life on Monday. The least I could do was make sure your apartment didn't freeze you both to death. Nathan left Sterling Crest Holdings at 6:30 and took the train back to Pilsen. The neighborhood looked different now. Not better exactly, still poor, still struggling, still forgotten by the people who ran the city, but different because Nathan was seeing it from the other side now. He had money, power, the ability to change things. The question was what to do with it. Emma was waiting when he got home, doing homework at the kitchen table with Mrs. Chen supervising. How was work? Emma asked. Weird, Nathan said honestly. But good weird. That's what you said last time. Yeah, well, it's still true. Mrs. Chen left. Nathan made dinner, actual chicken instead of ramen, vegetables instead of whatever was cheapest, and they ate together while Emma told him about school. She was happier. Nathan could see it in the way she smiled, the way she talked about her friends without that underlying anxiety about when they'd have to move again and she'd lose them all. After dinner, Nathan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Hello? Mr. Hayes, this is Dr. Rothman. I'm a pediatric pulmonologist at Northwestern. I was reviewing your daughter Emma's medical records, and I'd like to schedule a consultation. Nathan's stomach dropped. Is something wrong? No, nothing's wrong. But I noticed she's been managing a fairly serious lung condition with minimal intervention, and I think we might be able to do better. There's a new treatment protocol that's shown really promising results in pediatric cases like hers. How much does it cost? Nathan asked automatically. Well, that's the thing. It's expensive, about $40,000 for the full course. But I saw the note in her file about the Medical Assistance Foundation, and I wanted to reach out directly to discuss options. Nathan closed his eyes. The Medical Assistance Foundation, Charles Sterling's anonymous charity that had been keeping Emma alive for 2 years. Actually, Nathan said, cost isn't an issue anymore. When can we schedule the consultation? There was a pause. I'm sorry? Money isn't a problem. When can you see her? I have an opening Thursday afternoon, 3 p.m. We'll be there, Nathan said. He hung up and stood in the kitchen for a long moment, just breathing. Emma appeared in the doorway. Was that about me? Yeah. There's a new treatment that might help your lungs. We're going to try it. Is it expensive? Nathan knelt down so he was eye level with her. Baby, you don't ever have to worry about that again. If there's a treatment that can help you, we're doing it. End of discussion. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Really? She hugged him so hard he almost lost his balance. That night, after Emma was asleep, Nathan sat on the couch with his laptop and started researching everything he could find about Sterling Crest Holdings. The company's history, its divisions, its assets, the good it had done, and the harm it had caused. If he was going to do this, actually be a partner in running a billion-dollar corporation, he needed to understand what he was working with. His phone buzzed. Text from Evelyn. Patricia sent over preliminary employee wellness data. It's worse than I thought. Can we meet tomorrow morning to go through it? Nathan texted back. What time? 7 a.m. I know that's early, but I want to start before the office fills up. I'll be there. He set the phone down and went back to his research. Outside, Chicago was freezing, but inside the apartment with heat that actually worked, Nathan was warm. And for the first time in years, he was building towards something instead of just surviving. The next morning, Nathan arrived at Sterling Crest at 6:45 a.m. The building was almost empty, just security guards and a few early workers. The executive floor was completely silent. Evelyn was already in her office, surrounded by printouts and spreadsheets, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked like she'd been there for hours. Did you sleep? Nathan asked. Some. Evelyn gestured at the papers. Look at this. Our construction division has the highest injury rate in the industry. Our property management workers use more sick days than any other department, and our turnover in facilities, where you used to work, is 40% annually. Nathan picked up one of the spreadsheets. The numbers were damning. People were getting hurt, getting sick, and leaving in massive numbers, and nobody had cared enough to ask why. This is what my father meant, Evelyn said quietly. This is what I've been ignoring. We're hurting people, actually physically hurting them, and I've been so focused on profit that I never bothered to notice. So we fix it, Nathan said. How? Where do we even start? Nathan thought about Maria in the freezing office, about the cramped cubicles and broken equipment, about all the small indignities that added up to people's lives being harder than they needed to be. We start by asking them, he said. The people actually doing the work. We ask what they need, and then we give it to them. Evelyn nodded slowly. Patricia's setting up focus groups. First one is tomorrow. Will you come? Yeah, I'll be there. They spent the rest of the morning going through data, identifying patterns, building a plan. By the time other employees started arriving, they had the framework for something real, something that might actually make a difference. Nathan left at 9 to meet with Michael Richardson about finalizing the partnership agreements. The legal paperwork took 3 hours and left his brain feeling like mush, but by noon, it was official. He was a partner at Sterling Crest Holdings, owned 18% of a multi-billion-dollar company, had the power to actually change how it operated. It still didn't feel real. His phone rang. Emma's school. Nathan answered with his heart in his throat. Hello? Mr. Hayes? This is Principal Morris. Emma's fine, but she's having some breathing difficulty. Can you come pick her up? I'll be there in 20 minutes. He made it in 15. Emma was in the nurse's office, using her inhaler, looking small and tired. She perked up when she saw Nathan. Hey, Daddy. Hey, baby. You okay? Yeah, just couldn't breathe good in gym class. Nathan signed her out and took her home. By the time they got there, she was breathing easier, but the fear never really went away. It just lived in Nathan's chest permanently now, waiting to spike every time Emma coughed or wheezed or struggled. Remember that doctor I told you about? Nathan said as they settled on the couch. We're seeing him Thursday. He thinks he can help make your breathing better. Will it hurt? I don't know, baby. Maybe. But if it helps your lungs, it's worth it, right? Emma nodded. I'm tired of being sick. I know, me too. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, just existing, and Nathan thought about all the parents who couldn't leave work to pick up their sick kids, who couldn't afford the treatments that might help, who had to choose between their child's health and keeping their job. The programs Evelyn wanted to create could change that, could mean other parents didn't have to live with the constant terror that had defined Nathan's life for 2 years. That night, he got an email from Patricia with details about the first employee focus group. 20 people from various departments meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. in a conference room on the 45th floor. Nathan read through the list of attendees: construction workers, janitors, administrative assistants, the people who actually made Sterling Crest function but never got heard. He replied confirming he'd be there. Then he put Emma to bed, sat on the couch with his laptop, and kept learning everything he could about the company he now partly owned. Outside, snow fell on Chicago. Inside, Nathan Hayes was becoming someone new, someone with power. The question was whether he'd use it right. The employee focus group met on a Wednesday afternoon in a conference room that felt deliberately chosen to be non-threatening. Not the executive floor with its intimidating views and expensive art, just a normal meeting space on 45 with fluorescent lighting and chairs that had seen better days. Nathan arrived 15 minutes early and found Evelyn already there, arranging the room so the chairs formed a circle instead of the usual boardroom setup. No table, she explained when she saw his expression. I read that tables create psychological barriers between people. Makes it harder to have honest conversations. You've been researching, Nathan said. I've been terrified, Evelyn corrected. These people are going to hate me. I'm the CEO who's ignored them for 3 years while they struggled. Why would they trust anything I say now? Maybe they won't, Nathan said honestly. But you're trying. That counts for something. The employees started arriving at 3:55. They came in slowly, cautiously, like they were walking into a trap. Nathan recognized a few faces from his time in facilities. Others were complete strangers, people from departments he'd never worked in, doing jobs he'd never seen. Maria from the construction yard was there. She gave Nathan a small wave and sat down near the door, like she might need to run. By 4 p.m., all 20 people had arrived. They sat in uncomfortable silence, looking at Evelyn like she was a bomb that might detonate. Evelyn stood up. Thank you all for coming. I know this is weird and probably feels like some kind of corporate theater, so I'm going to be direct. My name is Evelyn Sterling. I'm the CEO of this company, and until very recently, I had no idea how badly we were failing the people who actually make Sterling Crest function. I want to fix that. But I can't fix it if I don't understand what's broken. So I'm asking you to tell me the truth about what it's like to work here. Not the sanitized version you'd give HR. The real version. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched out until it became painful. Finally, a man in his 50s wearing a facilities uniform raised his hand slightly. You can just talk, Evelyn said. You don't need permission. The man lowered his hand. I'm Marcus. I've worked in facilities for 11 years. And honestly, Ms. Sterling, I don't know why you'd listen to us now when you haven't for the last 3 years. Evelyn didn't flinch. That's fair. I didn't listen because I didn't think I needed to. I was wrong. I'm listening now. Why? Marcus asked. What changed? Evelyn glanced at Nathan. He gave her a small nod. My father died, Evelyn said quietly. And he left me a letter telling me I'd become exactly like him, cold, isolated, and so focused on profit that I'd stopped seeing people as human beings. Then I met Nathan, who I'd fired the morning of my father's memorial for something that wasn't his fault. And I found out he was the person my father respected most in the world. The man who'd saved his life and lost everything trying to do the right thing. It made me realize how much damage I've been doing without even noticing. The room was silent again, but it felt different now, less hostile, more uncertain. I don't expect you to trust me, Evelyn continued. I haven't earned that, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to do better, to tell me what you need so I can actually help instead of just pretending to care while nothing changes. A woman in her 30s spoke up. I work in property management. I've been here for 6 years, and I can tell you exactly what we need. We need to be treated like we matter. We need managers who don't yell at us for taking sick days when our kids are sick. We need equipment that actually works instead of breaking down every other week. We need to not feel disposable. Okay, Evelyn said, pulling out a tablet. Tell me more about the equipment. What's breaking down? The woman blinked. You want specifics? I want everything. If something's broken, I need to know about it so I can fix it. That opened the floodgates. People started talking about the heating systems that didn't work, the safety equipment that was outdated, the health insurance that covered almost nothing, the lack of childcare support, the way managers pressured them to work through injuries, the impossible choice between taking care of their families and keeping their jobs. Evelyn took notes on everything, didn't interrupt, didn't make excuses, just listened. Nathan watched her face as person after person described ways the company had failed them. He could see her processing it, the guilt, the shame, the growing horror at what she'd been complicit in. After 90 minutes, Maria spoke up. I appreciate what you're doing here, she said carefully, but Ms. Sterling, we've had listening sessions before. Corporate comes in, asks what we need, writes everything down, and then nothing happens. How is this different? Evelyn set down her tablet. It's different because I'm not delegating this. I'm not handing it off to HR or middle management. Nathan and I are designing these programs ourselves, and we're going to implement them whether the board likes it or not. I own 56% of this company. I can make this happen. What kind of programs? Someone asked. Medical assistance for employees' children, Nathan said. Emergency financial aid with no interest. Mental health services, childcare support, safety equipment upgrades. Whatever you actually need, not what some consultant thinks you need. And you're going to pay for all that how? Marcus asked skeptically. By cutting executive bonuses, Evelyn said flatly, including mine. If the people running this company can't take slightly smaller paychecks to make sure the people actually doing the work can survive, then we don't deserve those paychecks. The room went completely silent. You're serious, Maria said slowly. Completely serious. The board will never allow that, someone else said. The board doesn't have a choice, Evelyn said. I can push this through with or without their approval. I'd prefer to have their support, but I don't need it. Nathan watched the employees' faces. They were still skeptical. Years of broken promises had taught them not to trust corporate gestures, but something was shifting. A cautious hope starting to replace the cynicism. How soon? Maria asked. First programs launch in 6 weeks, Evelyn said. Medical assistance and emergency loans, the rest will roll out over the next 3 months as we finalize details. 6 weeks, Marcus repeated. That's fast. It needs to be fast, Nathan said. People are struggling right now, not in 6 months. Now. The meeting ran another hour. By the end, people were actually talking to Evelyn like she was human instead of some distant authority figure, sharing stories, offering suggestions, starting to believe this might actually be real. When everyone finally left, Evelyn sat down in one of the empty chairs and put her head in her hands. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, she said, voice muffled. You did good, Nathan said. I listened to 20 people describe how my company has been destroying their lives. That's not good. That's horrifying. But you listened, and you're going to fix it. That matters. Evelyn looked up at him. Her eyes were red. How do you do this? How do you care about people this much and not break from it? I broke plenty, Nathan said. I just didn't have a choice about whether to keep going. They sat in silence for a moment. Thank you, Evelyn said finally, for being here.
I couldn't have done that alone. Yeah, you could have, but you didn't have to. Thursday afternoon, Nathan took Emma to Northwestern Memorial to meet with Dr. Rothman. The doctor was younger than Nathan expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and the sort of calm competence that made you trust him immediately. He examined Emma thoroughly, asked detailed questions about her symptoms, and pulled up her medical history on his computer. Emma's been managing her condition remarkably well, given the limited intervention, Dr. Rothman said, but I think we can do significantly better. There's a new biologics treatment that's shown really promising results in pediatric cases like hers. It's a series of injections over 6 months that help reduce inflammation in the airways and improve lung function. Will it cure her? Nathan asked. No, but it should reduce the frequency and severity of attacks significantly. Many kids on this protocol can participate in normal activities without constant fear of respiratory distress. Emma looked up at Nathan. Does that mean I could do gym class? Yeah, baby, Nathan said, his throat tight. It means you could do gym class. The treatment isn't without side effects, Dr. Rothman continued. Some kids experience injection site reactions, headaches, fatigue, but the benefits typically outweigh the risks. I'd like to start Emma on it as soon as possible. How much? Nathan asked, even though he already knew cost wasn't an issue anymore. With insurance, it varies. Without insurance, the full course runs about $40,000. Nathan pulled out the new insurance card Michael Richardson had arranged. Platinum coverage, no deductible, no lifetime maximums, the kind of insurance that meant never having to choose between medicine and rent. We have insurance, Nathan said, handing over the card. Dr. Rothman's eyebrows went up slightly when he saw it. This should cover most of it. I'll have my office coordinate with them and we can get Emma started next week. Next week. Not next year when they'd saved enough. Not after Nathan worked 3 jobs and destroyed himself trying to afford it. Next week. On the drive home, Emma was quiet. You okay? Nathan asked. Is this real? Emma said. All of it? The money and the doctor and not having to worry? Yeah, baby, it's real. It doesn't feel real. I know. It doesn't feel real to me either. Emma was quiet for another minute. Then she said, I'm glad the man you helped left you money. He was nice. Nathan's eyes burned. Yeah, he was. That night, after Emma was asleep, Nathan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and started drafting ideas for the employee assistance programs. He thought about every time he'd needed help and didn't get it. Every impossible choice between Emma's health and basic survival. Every moment of crushing shame when he couldn't provide for his daughter. He wrote it all down, turned his pain into policy, made sure no other parent working for Sterling Crest would have to live through what he'd endured. His phone rang at 11 p.m. Evelyn. Are you awake? She asked. Yeah. Can you come to my apartment? I need to show you something. Nathan hesitated. Now? I know it's late, but it's important. Nathan checked on Emma, sleeping peacefully, and left a note for Mrs. Chen in case she woke up. Then he took a cab to the address Evelyn had texted him. The building was on the Gold Coast, the kind of place that had a doorman and marble floors and probably cost more per month than Nathan used to make in a year. The doorman waved him through after a quick call upstairs. Evelyn's apartment was on the 32nd floor. She opened the door wearing sweatpants and a Northwestern t-shirt, hair down, no makeup. Nathan had never seen her look so normal. Come in, she said. The apartment was huge, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, expensive furniture, art on the walls. But like her office, it felt empty, unlived in. There were no photos, no personal items, nothing that suggested an actual human being existed here. I've been thinking about what my father wrote, Evelyn said, gesturing for Nathan to sit on the couch. About how I'm lonely, and I realized he was right, but not in the way he probably meant. I'm not lonely because I don't have people around me. I'm lonely because I don't have anyone who actually knows me. Everyone in my life wants something, access, money, connections. Nobody just wants me. Nathan sat down. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person I've met in years who doesn't want anything from me. You didn't ask for the money or the shares. You'd probably be happier if none of this had happened and you'd just kept your janitor job and stayed invisible. Evelyn sat down across from him. I don't know how to have friends, Nathan. I don't know how to let people in. My father trained me to see relationships as transactions, and I'm really good at transactions but terrible at everything else.
So learn, Nathan said. How? Same way you're learning to run the company differently. One mistake at a time, one honest conversation at a time, one moment of actually giving a damn about someone other than yourself at a time. Evelyn laughed, but it sounded broken. You make it sound easy. It's not easy. It's terrifying, but it's better than being alone. They sat in silence for a while.
My father loved you, Evelyn said finally.
In his letter, he talked about you like you were the son he never had,
the person who embodied everything he wished he'd been. It made me jealous, which is stupid because he's dead and you're not actually trying to replace me. But I felt it anyway.
Your father didn't love me, Nathan said gently. He barely knew me. He loved the idea of me, this person who had integrity and made sacrifices and stayed human despite everything. But that's not the same as actually loving someone. Did he love me? Evelyn asked, and her voice cracked on it. Nathan thought about the letter Charles Sterling had written, the 12 pages trying to explain a lifetime of distance and failed connection.
Yeah, Nathan said. I think he did. He just didn't know how to show it in a way that didn't feel like a business transaction. Evelyn wiped at her eyes. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to die alone in a hospital room and have my daughter wonder if I ever actually cared about her.
Then don't, Nathan said. You're 30 years old. You have time to become someone different.
Will you help me? Evelyn asked. Not as a business partner, as a friend. I know I don't deserve it after what I did to you, but…
Yes, Nathan interrupted.
I'll help you. Evelyn looked at him like he'd just offered her something she'd been desperate for but never thought she'd get. Thank you, she whispered.
Nathan stayed for another hour. They talked about everything except business, about Emma and her treatment, about Evelyn's childhood and her complicated relationship with her father, about what it meant to try to be better when you'd spent so long being terrible. When Nathan finally left at 1 a.m., Evelyn walked him to the door. I meant what I said, she told him, about being friends. I'm going to be bad at it, probably, but I want to try. Good, Nathan said. Because Emma's been asking when she can meet the billionaire lady who fixed our heat. Evelyn's face did something complicated. She wants to meet me? She's 8. She thinks anyone with money is basically a superhero. I'm not a superhero. No. But you're trying to be better. That's close enough. The Employee Assistance Programs launched 6 weeks later, exactly on schedule. Medical support for workers' children, emergency loans with 0 interest, mental health counseling, childcare subsidies, safety equipment upgrades across all divisions, pay increases for the lowest paid workers, funded by cutting executive bonuses by 30%. The board fought it. Richard called it financial irresponsibility. 3 board members threatened to resign. Evelyn told them to go ahead and resign if they wanted to work for a company that valued profit over people. None of them resigned. The programs rolled out slowly at first, then faster as word spread. Employees who'd been skeptical started using the services. Fathers who couldn't afford their kids' medical care got help. Mothers who'd been working 2 jobs to make rent got financial breathing room. People who'd been suffering in silence got access to therapy and support. The construction division's injury rate dropped 20% in 3 months. Turnover in facilities dropped from 40% to 18%. Employee satisfaction surveys, which Sterling Crest had never bothered to conduct before, came back with responses that made Evelyn cry when she read them. Nathan sat in board meetings and watched her defend every decision, fight for every program, refuse to back down even when the old guard pushed back hard. She was learning, getting better, becoming the kind of leader her father had hoped she could be. And slowly, carefully, she was becoming his friend. Emma met Evelyn on a Saturday in late February. Nathan had been nervous about it, wasn't sure how his 8-year-old daughter would react to the woman who'd fired him, wasn't sure how Evelyn would handle being around a kid, but Emma had been persistent. I want to meet her, Emma had said. She fixed our heat and gave you the job that got us the money. I should say thank you. So Nathan arranged it. Coffee at Bitter Grounds. Neutral territory, low pressure. Evelyn arrived first, looking nervous in a way Nathan had never seen her look in board meetings. She was dressed casually, jeans, a sweater, hair in a ponytail, like she was trying hard to not be intimidating. Emma walked in holding Nathan's hand, took one look at Evelyn, and said, "You're really pretty." Evelyn blinked. Thank you? Daddy said you were scary, but you don't look scary. You look sad. Nathan winced. Emma, you can't just… It's okay, Evelyn said quickly. She knelt down so she was eye level with Emma. You're right. I am sad sometimes, but I'm working on it. Daddy's sad too, Emma said matter-of-factly, because Mommy died. But he's getting better. Evelyn glanced up at Nathan, something soft in her expression. I'm glad he's getting better. They ordered drinks, hot chocolate for Emma, coffee for the adults, and sat at a corner table. Emma talked about school and her friends and the new treatment she was getting that made it easier to breathe. Evelyn listened with the same focused intensity she brought to board meetings, asking questions, actually engaging. At one point, Emma said, Are you going to marry my daddy? Nathan choked on his coffee. Emma! What? Mrs. Chen asked me if you were dating the billionaire lady. I said I didn't know. We're friends, Evelyn said, not quite looking at Nathan. That's all. Oh, Emma said, clearly disappointed. Daddy needs friends. He doesn't have very many. Neither do I, Evelyn said quietly. Emma considered this. Then you should be friends with each other. That makes sense. Out of the mouths of children. They spent 2 hours at the coffee shop. By the end, Emma was showing Evelyn drawings from school, and Evelyn was laughing, actually laughing, at Emma's running commentary about her classmates. When they finally left, Emma hugged Evelyn without being asked. Evelyn looked stunned, like she didn't know what to do with the small human attached to her waist. Thank you for helping my daddy, Emma said into Evelyn's sweater, and for fixing our heat. It's really warm now. You're welcome, Evelyn said, her voice rough. Emma let go and took Nathan's hand. Can she come over for dinner sometime? Emma asked as they walked away. Maybe, Nathan said, if she wants to. He glanced back. Evelyn was still standing on the sidewalk, watching them leave, one hand pressed to her chest like she was holding something fragile. Nathan texted her that night. Emma wants to know if you eat pizza. Evelyn texted back. Is this a trap? Yes. Say yes anyway. Okay, when? Next Friday? I'll be there. She showed up at 6 p.m. carrying an expensive bottle of wine and a board game she'd clearly bought specifically for Emma. They ate pizza from a place down the street, not delivery because Nathan had learned to enjoy walking to get food now that he didn't have to count every dollar, and played the board game until Emma got too tired to focus. Evelyn helped Nathan put Emma to bed, reading her a story in a voice that started stiff but got softer as she went. Afterward, they sat on the couch with the wine Evelyn had brought. Thank you for this, Evelyn said, for letting me be part of your life. I know I don't deserve it. Stop saying that, Nathan said. You made a mistake. You're fixing it. That's enough. Is it? Evelyn looked at him. I destroyed your life, Nathan. Fired you when you desperately needed that job. If my father hadn't left you that money, Emma could have died because I was too humiliated to see you as human. But she didn't die, Nathan said. And you're different now. People get to change, Evelyn. Even people who've done terrible things. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. I'm trying to be different, to actually care about people instead of just using them. But I don't know if it's working. It's working, Nathan said. You launched programs that are changing thousands of people's lives. You cut your own salary to fund them. You spent 2 hours playing board games with my 8-year-old daughter. You're doing it. It doesn't feel like enough. It never feels like enough. That's how you know you're actually trying. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking wine, while Chicago glittered outside the window. Can I tell you something? Evelyn said eventually. Yeah, I think my father knew exactly what he was doing when he left you those shares. He wasn't just trying to teach me to be better, he was trying to give me a friend, someone who'd see me as human instead of as a means to an end. Nathan thought about Charles Sterling's letter, about the man dying in a parking garage who'd grabbed his hand and held on like it was a lifeline. Maybe, Nathan said, or maybe he just wanted to help the person who'd helped him. Either way, it worked out. Did it? Evelyn asked. You'd probably be happier if you'd never met me, just taken the money and disappeared. I don't know about that, Nathan said honestly. The money changed everything, but working with you, building these programs, actually making a difference, that matters too. Makes it feel like the suffering wasn't for nothing. Evelyn looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're a good person, Nathan Hayes."
"I'm a person who got lucky," Nathan corrected. "That's not the same thing. Luck is meeting someone dying in a parking garage and staying with them instead of walking away. Luck is testifying about corruption when it costs you everything. Luck is raising a daughter alone while working minimum wage and still being kind."
Evelyn shook her head. "That's not luck. That's character." "Then you're developing character," Nathan said. "Which is better than having it from the start. Means you chose it instead of just inheriting it." Evelyn smiled, a real smile, not the corporate mask she wore in meetings. "When did you become a philosopher?" "When I spent 2 years scrubbing toilets with a master's degree in computer engineering. Gives you time to think." They talked until midnight, about the company and the programs and the slow, difficult work of becoming better. About Emma's treatment, which was working better than expected. About Evelyn's father and the complicated legacy he'd left behind. When Evelyn finally stood to leave, she paused at the door. "I'm glad you saved my father's life," she said quietly. "Not because of the money, because it led me to you. And I needed someone like you in my life, even if I didn't know it." "I'm glad too," Nathan said. She left, and Nathan stood at the window watching her car pull away into the Chicago night. Spring came slowly to Chicago that year. The ice melted in fits and starts, leaving behind dirty snow and frozen puddles that took weeks to disappear. But gradually, the city thawed. Green started appearing in parks. The wind lost its knife edge. People stopped hunching against the cold and started walking upright again. Nathan and Emma moved out of the Pilsen apartment in early March, found a place in Oak Park, 3 bedrooms, working heat, a yard where Emma could play. The neighborhood was quiet and safe and full of families. Emma loved it. She had her own room for the first time in 2 years, a real bed with a frame instead of a mattress on the floor, toys and books and space to exist without being on top of Nathan constantly. And she could breathe. Dr. Rothman's treatment was working. Emma's attacks were less frequent, less severe. She could run and play without immediately wheezing, could go outside in cold weather without Nathan having a panic attack about her lungs. She was becoming a normal kid instead of a sick one. Nathan cried the first time he watched her play in the yard without struggling to breathe. Happy tears this time. Relief. The sense that maybe, finally, things were going to be okay. At Sterling Crest, the changes kept spreading. The employee assistance programs expanded. Worker safety improved. Turnover dropped company-wide. People started talking about Sterling Crest as a good place to work instead of just a paycheck. Evelyn became known for something other than being cold and ruthless. The business press called her a reformer. Employees called her fair. Nathan called her his friend. She had dinner at their house most Fridays now. Brought Emma small gifts, books, art supplies, things that showed she was actually paying attention to who Emma was. Helped with homework sometimes, laughed at Emma's jokes, became part of their lives in a way that felt natural instead of forced. And slowly, the loneliness that had defined both their lives started to fade. Nathan wasn't alone anymore. Had a friend who understood what it meant to reinvent yourself. Had a purpose beyond just survival. Had a daughter who was healthy and happy and safe. Evelyn wasn't isolated anymore. Had people in her life who cared about her as a person instead of as a means to wealth or power. Had work that meant something beyond profit margins. Had a reason to keep trying to be better. One Friday in late April, after Emma was asleep, they sat on Nathan's back porch drinking wine and watching spring happen. "I got offered a position," Nathan said. "Chief Ethics Officer for Sterling Crest, officially on staff instead of just being a shareholder who shows up to meetings." Evelyn turned to look at him. "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. It would mean being at the office more, less time with Emma. You'd also have more power to actually change things, more ability to make sure we keep doing this right." Nathan thought about it, about Maria in her warm office, about employees getting help when they needed it, about building something that mattered. "Yeah," he said finally. "I'll take it." Evelyn smiled. "Good, because I already had HR draw up the paperwork." "You were that sure I'd say yes?" "I was that hopeful you'd say yes." "There's a difference." They sat in comfortable silence while the Chicago night settled around them. "Do you think your father would be proud?" Nathan asked. "Of what we've built?" Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "I think he'd be surprised. He designed this whole thing expecting us to fight each other or fail spectacularly. Instead, we actually became friends and built something good. That wasn't really his style. Maybe that's better, Nathan said. Better than what he expected. Maybe. Evelyn took a sip of wine. I miss him, which is weird because he was never really there to miss. But I keep thinking about things I want to tell him, ways the company is changing, how happy the employees are, how I finally understand what he was trying to teach me. He knew, Nathan said. In his own way, he knew you'd figure it out. How can you be sure? Because he trusted you enough to leave you the company. And he trusted me enough to leave me the shares that would force you to change. He believed we could do this even when neither of us believed it ourselves. Evelyn's eyes were wet. I wish I could tell him thank you. He knows, Nathan said. Wherever he is, he knows. They sat together under the spring sky while Chicago breathed around them, transformed by warmth and time and the slow work of becoming better. Inside the house, Emma slept peacefully, her breathing steady and strong. And for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, the future felt less like a threat and more like a promise. The cold distance that had defined their lives between rich and poor, powerful and powerless, isolated and connected, had finally disappeared. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to breathe, enough to hope, enough to believe that people could change, that mercy mattered more than revenge, that the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward and transform everything. Charles Sterling had built an empire, but what Nathan and Evelyn built together was something better, a place where people mattered, where dignity wasn't negotiable, where a janitor and a billionaire could become friends because they both understood what it meant to be broken and choose to heal anyway. The story could have ended differently. Nathan could have walked away from that parking garage 4 years ago, could have ignored the corruption, could have taken the money and disappeared. Evelyn could have stayed cold and isolated, could have ignored her father's letter, could have fired Nathan and never thought about him again. But they didn't. They chose the harder path, the one that required vulnerability and growth and the terrifying work of letting other people matter. And that choice changed everything, not just for them. For the 4,000 people working at Sterling Crest Holdings who suddenly had a company that gave a damn about their lives. For the families who didn't have to choose between medical care and keeping the lights on. For every person who'd ever been invisible to the powerful and suddenly found themselves seen. That was Charles Sterling's real legacy, not the buildings or the billions. The understanding that people, flawed, struggling, ordinary people, were always worth saving, worth seeing, worth the effort it took to become better. Nathan stood up, collected the wine glasses, and headed inside. Evelyn followed him. Same time next week? She asked at the door. Same time next week, Nathan confirmed. She hugged him, quick and slightly awkward because she was still learning how, and left. Nathan locked the door, checked on Emma one more time, and went to bed. Outside, Chicago slept under stars. Inside, a former janitor and a reformed billionaire had built something that would outlast them both. Not an empire, something better. A place where winter finally ended, where warmth wasn't a luxury, where people took care of each other because it was right, and where two broken people had found a way to heal together. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.